Hi there, my name's Andy Young and I'm one of the automotive lecturers down at Unitech in Auckland, New Zealand, and welcome to my Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Now, on this hopefully not too long a video, I'm going to show you how to remove, inspect and refit a universal joint to a prop shaft. Now, this is very rusty, and this is part of the front section, or the short section, of a prop shaft that I brought from the UK 8 years ago for my Nissan Patrol, and it's been wrapped up for 8 years, and unfortunately it's sort of got a bit rusty. It wasn't like that 8 years ago, so that's going to make life a lot more interesting pulling this joint apart. And I'm only doing this for a video for the channel. I wouldn't normally be doing this. Usually the only reason why you take joints out of prop shafts is because you need to replace them. You don't take them out just to have a little look at them and put them back in again. That's just ridiculous, to be honest. The joints are not expensive, and the only reason why you pull one apart that I can see, and I've pulled thousands of these apart over the years on my fleet of four-wheel drives that I used to have, is when they've got play or they're stiff. You know, if they're working fine, why take it apart? Okay, so I've got a lot of cleaning up to do, and I'm going to show you how to pull that joint, how to separate it from this prop shaft, to get it out of the yokes. Here we go. Now, before you start pulling these apart, it's always a good idea to check the condition of the joint, and to do that you're basically checking both the two cross pieces there, the two bearings side to side, so to speak, in this position, and the up and down bearings, and they should all have about the same kind of resistance, and they should all move quite freely. If there's any indication that it's notchy or there's play, then of course the joint will need to be replaced. Now, on this particular one, it's got the circlips on the inside of the yoke. Just under all this rust and corrosion, there are some circlips, and you'll see them a bit later on once I've cleaned them all off. Also, you tend to find Suzuki's and other companies tend to put the circlip on the outside of the joint, just down here. It makes no real difference. It doesn't affect the way you disassemble them, but obviously you've got to remove those circlips before you can separate the joint. And for me, I've got a lot of gardening to do. Look at the state of that. Okay, so I'll probably spend about an hour cleaning this up. Another area other than the circlips that need to be cleaned up before you can disassemble is the actual end of the cups. We call these the cups, and these are what hold the needler roller bearings. And under all this rust is a cup, believe it or not. Look at that. Whoa. Always getting told off for using screwdrivers and things I shouldn't use them for, but man, they do a pretty good job, don't they? So these cups are going to be pressed outwards, so we've got to make sure that there's no corrosion, no resistance on the remaining part of that machined hole that they sit in, to be honest. So, oh, there goes the thumb. Right, so we'll just keep digging away and making sure that that's going to be nice and free for when we come to press that unit out. There we go. I might even put a scriber in there actually and just dig out the last little bit. Wow, it's pretty bad. Luckily it's just for demonstration purposes, but hey, you know, I suppose it's quite good that it's a bad one, because that way you get to see what you have to do to get a bad one out rather than just an easy one. Okay, so I'm going to do that for the rest, the other three, and I'm also going to clean off all around the circlip surfaces down there. And the circlip is removed with a punch usually, and we tap it out from here. That's the end of the circlip leg. It comes down to here. Give it a tap and it'll come out over the top, and you'll see me do that a bit later on once I finish cleaning things up. Excellent. Cool. Okay, so the plan of attack is to remove this part first. Always get rid of the long part first. Makes it a lot easier just working on the small flange that connects to your diff or to your gearbox. So it's these two we need to undo first. And to do that, just get a punch, and obviously wear eye protection, and get the punch on the back of that circlip. Oh, look at that. Okay, that's that one. And there we go. Cool. That's one. Two. Excellent stuff. Right, so that's how to remove the circlips. The next job is we've got to push one of these in to force the other one out. And once that's done, we can use a socket to push the other one out. And then we can get the spider, that's the centerpiece, the cross, out of the yokes. Okay, cool. So we'll use a small socket on there that's just slightly smaller than the diameter of the cup. And we'll use a large socket on this side so that this cup can go inside the socket when we press it off. I have a sneaky suspicion this is going to be really, really tight. And this little vise, it's not really up to the job. I might have to move to the big vise. Right, I'm back. And it's a different day, actually. And Ben is here in the workshop making noise and mess. So you'll have to ignore him. Okay, so we've got... You can lathe, you're alright, it's all good. We've got basically the joint, and we need to choose a couple of sockets so we can press out the cups. Now, first thing to do is to measure the diameter of the cup, which we've got here, I don't know, maybe 27 and a bit millimeters. Doesn't need to be too accurate. We need one socket that will fit in there and one that will actually go on the outside on this side, but have sufficient clearance to allow that cup to go inside the socket. So I'll have a rummage around and see what I can find. Okay, so I've got a 19mm socket to go just inside the diameter of the cup there, look. On the other side, I'm using, oh, what is it? Let's have a look. A 30mm socket, and that's going to sit over this side here, and that cup can go inside the socket. There's enough clearance. So I'll get this set up in the vise, and well, I'll show you how we do it. Okay, so a small socket on one side, doesn't matter which side really, and then the large socket needs to go down on the other side. Now, it gets a bit tricky when you're on your own. Ben's a bit busy, so we'll just do that. There we go. Okay. Right, it's a bit of an alignment session required. It's really important you get this whole thing in the right place, because if you don't, then you can cause yourself all sorts of problems. Okay, now, once you're in the right place, you can basically just tighten up the vise, and you'll need a hammer. So the way we're set up is this cup should get pushed in, all the clearance will disappear, and then this cup here should get pushed out into the socket, or at least towards the socket. And you might have to just give them a bit of a helping hand with a bit of a shock. There we go. Okay, so you can see this one now moving in. And, okay, we've got a bit of a problem with the alignment of this socket, but you can see that this one here was moving across this way. Okay, we'll just sort that socket out. There we go. Cool, yeah. Right. Okay, and you can see that one's been pushed through, and it's pushing the other cup out. Perfect. So now this cup has been pushed out, and sometimes you can just, oh there we go, look, we can just pull it out. See all the little needle roller bearings in there. Now comes the dilemma. Sometimes you can actually just lift that straight out if there's enough clearance, and that'll come straight out, but it won't on this one. So we're going to have to push that one back through that yoke. And we can drop that socket over there and basically just press that back through. Now it's really important that you're careful to ensure that this cup goes in parallel. If it doesn't, what will happen is it'll start to bind and dig in to the yoke in here, and that's actually really bad because you can damage the yoke. Okay, well, we'll give it a go. And sometimes you've just got to sort of work it through a little bit at a time. There you go, look. So that cup is now going back through that yoke again. Now obviously it only goes back as far as the vise, and then we'll need to put that large socket back in to give it a clearance. There we go. Okay, so that one's back through again. Open the vise a bit further. And stick that one in place. There we go. Excellent. Job done. Okay, get rid of those. Right. That's that cup out. And now we need to remove the socket. Excellent. So pop the socket in the vise. There we go. Give it a tap. Great stuff. And now we can separate the yoke. Basically it just came out just like that. Okay, so we're halfway there. Now what we need to do now is repeat the same process with this, but by undoing these two, or getting rid of these two cups first, allows us to lose the large part of the prop shaft. Makes it a lot easier to work with. So all we have to do now is work with this in the vise. It's much easier. And if it's the rear section of the prop, which is this one here, then really you want to get rid of this big lump of metal as soon as you possibly can, because you know they're pretty unwieldy and not really, not really very nice to work with. Yeah, not much fun at all. Okay, so sorry camera. Oh, there goes the grease. Right. So we'll do exactly the same process with this one. Now don't forget we need to remove the circlips first, and there's one down there, look, under all that rust. This one is quite rusty actually. So there's one down there and another one just there. And you can see the little lumps. And what they look like once they're out is like that, look. That's the kind of thing that we're removing. Okay, we'll crack on. So again, the first job is really to remove all the rust and stuff, just so you can see exactly what you're aiming for. Give those a bit of a clean. Down there. I always find little flat screwdrivers are great for this job. Okay. Excellent. Right. One punch, one hammer. Don't forget your eye protection. And give it a tap. There we go, that's that one out. And number 2. Now this one's a bit hard to get on the end, so you can give it a tap round. Using the flat. And then, if it's going to play ball, you should be able to punch that out. There we go. Excellent. Right job. Okay, so that's those 2 circlips now out. Now, the next problem, and these things are full of problems, believe me. If you look at the original yoke, the first one we took off, and that's the part of the long bit, can you see that the sides here are parallel? Now that makes it really easy to put your socket on there and press out the cups. Unfortunately, not all yokes have, you know, a parallel either side. And if you look at this one, the flange yoke, the one that bolts onto the diff or the gearbox flange, it's not parallel. You know, if I hold that one up next to it, you can see very clearly, just rotate it around, that it comes out here. It's got an extra piece of cast iron here, look. So if we were to put the socket on the side, can you see it won't sit square? You know, it should be like that, you know, but it's not. It's going to sit like that, and that's really bad when you put it in the vise. Nothing really sits properly, and it causes a huge problem. So what do we do? Well, if you've got an old socket, and I'm not doing it to this one, but if you've got an old socket, then you know there's nothing to stop you grinding out the bottom part so that it matches that profile and then it sits level. That would be great. You know, that's an easy thing to do, and it works. The other option is, although it looks a bit messy, is to put the socket on like that and find something that will fill that gap at the top, be it a spanner or something like that, a piece of metal. But you really only have a small amount of surface area to play around with. So it is difficult. Now obviously we can get this started without using the socket. We can just find a bit of spanner, you know, a spanner, a piece of steel that's going to match the height this side, and we're going to be able to get that cup on the move, so to speak. It's going to break its position, and that's the hardest bit, is to get them to move initially. So you want to try and keep the number of components that you're trying to trap in the vise to a minimum, otherwise they always end up on the floor and falling out of the vise and things. So on the other side, where the small socket goes in, it doesn't matter what the profile is, because it's just going to sit in there and we can push it through with the vise. That's really easy. But it's the side that the large socket has to go on. There's no way you can put it in the vise at that angle. It just isn't going to work. So you have to come up with a plan. And as a mechanic, that's your job, to work it out and find a way forward with the tools that you've got. Okay, so we'll head back over to the vise and I'll show you the way I do it. Okay, so we can grab our smaller socket. That's going to sit in there. We'll just open the vise up, and that can pop in there like that. And then, you want that socket to be central to the vise. So you don't want to be doing it there or there. That's just going to overstress your vise. So make sure that your socket's bang in the middle of the vise. Tighten up the vise, and now you'll see, before it goes too tight, you'll see very clearly the difference here that we need to make up. So at the moment we're looking at around about 5 mil. So I'll go and find a piece of steel, hopefully be a flat plate that's about 5 mil thick. We can just nick in there to hold this at 90 degrees to the vise, because that's the joint itself must remain at 90 degrees to the vise face. Otherwise, if we go at an angle like that, it really isn't going to work. Things are going to start to slip and fire out, and you could hurt yourself. Okay, so I've found a piece of 5 mil plate, just flat steel. I'm just going to sit that in, so it just to say sits. It's a bit awkward on your own. It's always good to have somebody to give you a hand doing this. It just sits on the edge of the yoke, but it's not going to prevent the piston from going past it. So you can see now the whole item is pretty much 90 degrees to the faces of the vise, so we can give it a really good crush. Let's see if we can get that. And it'd be this yoke here that moves first. There you go. Oh, right. So this one's started to move, and you can see now the other yoke is also starting to come through. And we can keep going until it touches the vise. There we go. Okay. So that's how far we've got. So we need to push that one a bit further through. We can keep using the socket. Pretty good fit in that one. We can keep using the socket in there. And we're going to have to use now the bigger socket on this side. So we've got the socket and the plate of steel just to give it that space. And that was a pretty good match actually. It's about level, you know, with the rest of it. It's good. So we'll open the vise up some more. And first off, we'll just sit that back in there. Oh, a bit more yet. You need a pretty big vise when your prop shafts get quite large. I mean, obviously you can do this in a press as well if you want. That's not a problem. Presses tend to be really powerful. If you're not careful, you can actually damage the yokes. So you've got to be super careful when you're doing this kind of stuff. Right, this is where you really want to could do with a bit of a helper to do this. And my students always do this in pairs. There we go. Okay, I reckon that's going to work. So we've now got the socket, small socket, yoke, the spider, the cup, the big socket, and we've taken up the space with a 5mm plate. Now it's not sat fantastically well, and it's either going to fire out or it's going to work, and there's only one way to find out. There you go, look, so you can see that this cup now is moving through. Now I'm going to try to keep this cup just in this yoke, and that's going to make it a lot easier to push it back through. We're not going to risk misalignment later on. Okay, so we'll try that, and I'll show you a little trick to get the rest of that this cup out, which allows us to leave that cup still in the yoke. It's not far off coming out. It's a pretty couple of mil and we're there. Right, so now what you can do is trap that yoke. And when you're doing these kind of prop shaft joints, you spend your entire day opening and closing the vise. It's just the way it is. Right, so you now clamp the yoke in there and give the whole thing a tap. That was easy. With the hammer. And that's another yoke, another cup out. Right, the last one. So we'll open the vise again. Pretty much all the way. And this time small socket in there, large socket on there, and of course we're going to need that bit of 5mm plate as well. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll move it out so it's flush with the yoke first. So we'll just minimise the number of components. Yeah, okay. Right, so we need to insert that. You can see, if I try and just tighten that up, can you see everything's going off centre? And that's really bad. It just doesn't work. And sometimes you can tighten up with your knee on the vise. That's a useful little trick to learn. There we go. Okay, I think we're ready. Right, excellent. And just be careful as it comes past the plate, in case the plate's in the wrong place. I think that one is. Just. So we'll do a bit of a wiggle, tighten it up. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So we're now on the final stage. And the final stage is to fit the large diameter socket so we can just finish that pushing out of this particular cup. Now some people do use a hammer to push these cups out. It's a bit harsh, to be honest. I think you're a lot better off using your vise. Pressing it out is far more controlled. You can see what's going on. You can stop and start whenever you want. It really is a lot better. Okay. There we go. Ooh, what's going on there? Look, a bit off center. Right, so we'll just straighten her up. Man, I used to do loads of these. Fortunately, the Suzuki ones that we did, nearly all of them had parallel yokes. It was much, much easier, but if they hadn't, and when I was doing the same ones, I would happily grind a socket to match the profile. There we go, look. Didn't take much more. Big socket, out. And that's the last cup removed. And we've just got a socket stuck in there now. Maybe that's going to come out. There we go. And then, hey presto, we can remove the spider. And that's it. So there you go. That's the spider removed completely from the two yokes. We've basically disassembled the entire joint. And what was the purpose? Well, like I said at the start of the video, the only reason why you would pull one of these apart is to replace it. Gone are the days where you pull them apart just to clean them and re-grease them and put them back together again. Unless, of course, it's one off a big truck where the unit's very expensive. But for cars, these things start at like 20 bucks, 30 bucks for a decent Japanese one. That's New Zealand. In England, we were paying about £5 for a Hardy Spicer, which is not good quality. Or the Koyo ones were about £10 a piece, and that was a few years ago now. So, but even then, you know, if you're going to pull it apart, and the amount of effort taken to remove it from the two yokes, you just put a new one in. You know, don't mess about. However, I am going to refit this old one only because this is just a demonstration on how to do it, as my students will be doing it tomorrow, and it needs to be done. It's a video. But whilst you're in there, just out of interest, obviously you've got an inspection process to do if you are going to put the thing back in again, or if you're trying to do diagnostics, if you're trying to work out where a noise was coming from, then you look at the 4 journals on the spider, and you know, you'll be looking at those and checking to make sure that they're nice and smooth and there's no gouging. Now, if on these things, normally if they've gone dry, around these journals you'll get what's called corrugations, where the needle rollers have created a delve, a groove each in that surface, and that creates a lot of notching and obviously additional play as well. Now there is a grease nipple on there, so you could check that that's working okay, and when you put them up with grease, the grease normally will go down the channel or to the journal of least resistance, and that means the seal that offers the least resistance. So when you pump them up with grease, you don't always, in fact 9 times out of 10, you don't get fresh grease going to all 4 journals. It may go to 1, 2, 3, but unlikely it's going to fill all 4 with fresh grease. So you might have to shuffle the joint across a bit somehow, put pressure on it to try and get the grease to go down, the alternative one. But it's not ideal. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and say, hey, you know, I've greased it up best I can. The only way to do it properly is to take it out, completely degrease it, clean it up and put it back together. But at that point, you just put a new one in. So, you know, especially if you're paying a garage to do it, geez, you know, for their labour rates, the labour's massive compared to the cost of a new joint. You would always put a new joint in. But it's important that you put one in of good quality. And there are some very, very poor quality joints out there now that China's come on board and providing us automotive parts. And you know, you should always check the box and check the bearing itself, because you know, there's quite a few people now have experienced buying what they believe to be a genuine Japanese part, and it says it on the box, genuine Japanese. You pull it out, and stamped clearly on the bearing, made in China. Now, I've got nothing against the Chinese at all. I think they're great people. But I have a major problem with some of the products that come out of China. Everything is made to a price, and unfortunately, if the Chinese are told to make it really, really, really cheap, then the quality is going to suffer. So it's not really down to their ability to make stuff good or bad. I'm sure that they can make some really, really good stuff. But like anyway, you've got to pay for it. You get what you pay for. So just double check. So the journal should be good. Make sure that there's no crap actually in these galleries where the grease is pumped down from the grease nipple. Inside the cups, that's the other part of the bearing, isn't it? Because don't forget, that's only the inner race for each of the 4 bearings. So inside the cup, and it's a bit grimy in there. Where's my screwdriver gone? Inside the cup, I wonder if I can take a seal out for you. Let's have a look. Well, I'll take one of the bearings out. One of the needle rollers. Come on, needle roller, you can do it. There we go. Give it a bit of a clean. These are actually in pretty good nick. Considering how bad this prop shaft looked at the start, not doing too bad. So inside that cup, if you can see or not, there's lots and lots of these little, oh, nearly, come back, all is forgiven. So inside there's heaps of these little tiny needle roller bearings. There's probably in each cup 30 or 40 of them, and you need to check them. If they do break, they turn to dust if there's poor lubrication, and you know, just keep an eye on them, make sure that they're all lubricated properly, make sure they're all stood upright. One of the big problems when you're assembling these things is that one of those needle roller bearings, and they're all currently in the vertical position inside that cup, as you assemble the joint, one of them gets dropped down and it sits across the bottom of the cup. Now that causes a terrible problem, because when you press those cups together, you've obviously got that additional thickness of a roller holding one of the cups out, and you won't get the circlip on. It's as simple as that. So if you've pressed them together in the vise and you can't press them together anymore, and you can't get one of the circlips on, I guarantee to you one of those rollers, or 2 or 3, have dropped down the bottom of the cup. They're lying in the bottom of the cup, and of course the journal on the spider can't go all the way down into the cup, so the whole thing sits slightly apart, and the only thing you can do is take it apart, sort those little rollers out, and start again, put it all back together again, and it's a real problem. Okay, so I'm not really going to go much further on the inspection side of things, but you know, the cups should be nicely greased, all the rollers should be in good order. But if you've gone this far, you're probably going to put a new one in. Really. Okay, so I'll show you how to reassemble this joint now back into the prop shaft. And of course, the first yoke we're going to put them in is the small yoke, because it keeps things easy to work with. And then once that side's built up, we've got the spider and the cups in place and the circlips on, then we'll fit the assembly to this one here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the plan of attack when you're assembling, and I have added just a little bit of grease into each cup, just to sort of make this whole thing worthwhile, really. And that's what you would need to do when you come to reassemble if you are using the same joint. The joint sits inside like that initially, and we can actually fit both cups at once. We don't have to do one at a time. So I'll put one in there, and I'm going to put that journal down into that cup. And then on this one here, I'll do the same. I'm going to pop that cup back in, and I'm going to press them together. Using the device, and we'll get it. Now when you're putting them back together, they usually go back a lot easier, so you don't have to be down the centre line of the vise, but you do need to have the whole thing at 90 degrees. Okay. And it's a good idea to keep stopping and just making sure that everything's still turning properly as it should. Now we can use that 90mm socket, and that's going to push that a bit further home. And you've only got to go as far as the circlip groove. There we go. So once you've got that first one basically level where it should be with the circlip groove showing, we've just got to finish pushing that one in. So we can just put the device and just continue to squash that in, because that one won't get pushed in anymore because it's level with the actual yoke. It's pretty tight. Pretty tight. It still rotates, which is a good sign. So we'll just do that a bit more. Now, if it does get really tight, you're going to have to do it in the centre of the vise. You won't be able to see what's going on quite so well. There we go. So now, we've got the circlip groove on this side, but we haven't quite got it on this side, so that needs to go a bit further in yet. So we'll use the socket. This is the small diameter socket that we used earlier on. There we go. I'm just going to put it on the vise so we're away from that tapered part of the yoke. That should be enough just to push it in a bit further. So we've got the circlip groove just starting to show now. I think a bit of socket misalignment going on there. There we go. Perfect. So I think now we've got enough for, there we go. We should have enough now to get the two circlips fitted on that side. Now I'll show you a little trick before you insert the circlips. Now, these old circlips here, again, if you're fitting a new joint, you'll be given, with the joint will come new ones of these circlips. But if you're going to reuse the old ones, which is a bit iffy, then to make your life a bit easier, we're going to give them a quick clean up on some emery cloth to get rid of all the rust, and you'll find it will go in a lot easier, much easier. If you haven't got emery cloth, just a sheet of sandpaper will do just fine, and it'll just make them much easier to pop into place. Okay, so a bit of sandpaper, whatever you've got kicking around, doesn't really matter. And then just gonna give that a quick clean up. Not so good with gloves on, to be honest. And you really don't have to go mad, it's just to get off that sort of corrosion part. There we are, that's good. On either side. So it fits in, just slots into that groove nice and easy. Okay, I'll do the other three and I'll see you back at the vise. Okay, so we can pop this in the vise and we'll fit, hopefully, there we go, two of those circlips. And you can see they came up pretty well. Okay, so now it's time to fit the circlip and just make sure you've got enough of a groove for it to sit in. Yep, that's cool, which tells us that the cup's far enough in. And now, making sure we don't get a glove stuck in it. Give it a tap. And then use your punch just to make sure it's all the way home. You've got to make sure that that's all the way in, otherwise if it flies out, it'll be a major problem. Okay, same for this side. Get off. Right. Again, just make sure it's all the way home and sat in that groove. Really important. Excellent stuff. Okay, so the next job is to install the last two cups in the main part of the prop shaft, and again that just slots, usually, there we go, look, slots over there like that, and we can start to fit the cups. Okay, so put that in the vise, a bit easy to control, and we can get cup number one, make sure it's nice and clean. In fact, there's a bit of dirt down there. There we go. Get the cup, drop it over the journal. And you got to make sure you know that it's correctly located, and obviously be aware of those little needle roller bearings as they can drop down. So again, we've got a bit of dirt on the end there. Look, get that clean. I'll just drop that cup back into there. I can't stress enough, oh, another glove, can't stress enough that normally you'd fit new joints. This is just a demonstration. Okay, so again we're in the same sort of situation, you know, where you've got the joint across to one side, we've got the cup, both cups just pushed in slightly, and now we're going to press them together. Now again, it shouldn't be too hard, so we can use one side of the vise and we'll just ease those in, and you've just got to be really wary about those rollers. Now fortunately this yoke, the sides are parallel, so we can just keep cranking all the way in. There we go. A bit more required, we'll do it in the centre of the vise. A bit more force. There we go. And you can see here that new grease coming out through the seals. Okay, well, are we far enough? That's the question. And if we look down there, I think we need a little bit more in on that one. A bit hard to see with all the grease on that one actually. Bit of a clean. Yeah, a bit further for both of them. Okay, so we can use our socket for that. Yeah, they sit about 1 mil in from the outside edge of the yoke. There we go, that's that one. Flick it round. We'll do this side. Super job. And you need a really good vise for this job. Okay, so now it's time to install the next circlip. Now it's not quite as easy now, and you can't really get in there with your hammer, but we'll give it a go. There we go, look, not too bad. And again with the punch, just to finish it off. And we've just got to check to make sure we're all the way in, which we are. Okay, so spin it round and we'll do the other side. Again, let's give it a bit of a clean off, I think. Last one! So pop that in there, get it in the groove, give it a tap down. Ooh, it's not quite in, is it? There we go. And we'll just finish it off with the punch. Okay. Now it's really, really important to make sure that your circlips are all the way in their grooves and all the way home. Because if one comes out, you could lose a cup. And if this thing's spinning around at, you know, a fair lick, could be crankshaft speed, who knows, then, well, if it lets go, it's a real problem. Okay, Now, once you've built that joint up, you might find that it's a little bit tight to rotate. Don't worry. Get your magic hammer. Your magic hammer fixes nearly everything. And all you have to do is basically go around and give it a smack on each of those cups, and it'll shock them back and take up any extra clearance between the circlip and the yoke to free off the joint. But look at that. It's freed it right off. It's pretty good, actually. And of course, don't forget to pump it with fresh grease before you put it back on the vehicle. And that turned out to be not that hard, considering just how rusty this prop shaft was when I first started this video. It didn't look very promising, did it? So there you go. One prop shaft. That's how you fit universal joints. And inspect them, by the way. Okay, well, if you've got any questions or comments, then please do leave them down the bottom, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like to subscribe, then click, I think it's up there, click on the subscribe button, and then if you want to turn on notifications, click the little gear symbol, and then tick the box saying to turn on notifications. And that way you will get an email sent through whenever I upload a new video, so you get a chance to watch another one. You'll find me on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter, so you can communicate with me not just through YouTube, but through those 3 different portals as well. Well, hope you enjoyed the video, found it helpful. My name is Andy Young, and you've been watching the Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. Cheers, crew. Over and out.